I was going to go see this on Thursday, but to be honest, the Thor movies aren't the best of the MCU. And Thursday's also the day where I have one of my favorite new shows on. So you're getting this review on Friday, because I just saw it. Welcome to the heart of the stories we tell. My name is Rob, and tonight I will be reviewing Thor Ragnarok, a story based partially on mythology and partially on a comic book writer who wanted to just change the entire MCU. Now, way back when, Thor was one of the very first movies to come out. It was Phase 1 in its entirety. In fact, it's the first time we see the Infinite Gauntlet. It's the first time a lot of stuff happens. So, you gotta look back on it and realize just how awesome it was. We even got cool little references to things that they didn't think they'd ever be able to pay off. And all in a build-up to seeing our main set of heroes in the Avengers. And boy did that pay off. Well, not my favorite of the heroes, and not my favorite of the shows, I did really kind of squee when he showed up at the end of Doctor Strange, which is where we saw him last time we saw him, hanging out with the Sorcerer Supreme in the Sanctum Sanctorum. Now, for those of you that don't know, what I do here is I review TV shows, movies, books, you name it, but I also go into detail into what they mean, the why and how of storytelling, because I am a storyteller that's trying to figure out how and why we tell stories. If that sounds interesting to you, click that subscribe button. And now let's get into the review itself. It was an action-packed movie, and one that I have to admit I'm a little metz on. It was a cool action film, and totally worth seeing. It's not like I'm going to say I regretted the $10 that I spent to go in. There were some surprises, some things that I didn't expect, a lot of things that I did expect, and my personal favorite version of Thor. There were some issues with the magic technology divide. We'll talk about that in the spoiler section. But more and more, it's the same action-y surfer dude Thor that we've seen in many other versions of the MCU already. In fact, all things considered, this was probably one of the better MCU movies for slipping in little Easter eggs and little here and there's. I went to this movie alone, and of all the Marvel movies, this is the one that I wish I had brought my sister to. She's someone that can get into these movies, but doesn't go into the real details. And the reason I wish that she was there is because I heard people asking questions around me, and I'm curious, coming out of the theater, how many people were confused. This is probably the Marvel U movie that requires the most amount of homework, the most amount of, hey, did you catch that? Hey, this is happening pretty quick, who's that? And add to it some Norse mythology that just gets thrown real quick at you, and you have what could be a confusing movie. But notice I said could be, not is. There are enough moments, enough jokes, enough action sequences to pull you right into that even though you missed the setup, even though you missed some of the reaction time because of some poor editing choices, overall, I'm sure a lot of people are going to enjoy this. Having said that, the part of me that actually looks at the way stories flow says I have to take some points off for that. Plenty of complaints for when I get to the good, the bad, and the ugly in the spoiler section. But for now, I'm a little up in the air, and because of that, I think most people will enjoy this movie. So I'm giving it an Electrum rating. I can't quite give it gold, but everyone's going to have a hell of a time. Now, for those of you that want to know more details, stick around for the spoiler section. So once again, it's stop. Spoiler time. Okay, you're still here? Thor Ragnarok starts off in the middle. Not just, like, in media res and then flashback. No, it's pretty straightforward, but what it does is, it starts us off in the middle of what Thor's been doing for the last year and a half since we've seen him last. And then we catch up to that scene in the Sorcerer Supreme Tower later. All in all, like I said, it's some badass action, but it's a little choppy. There are moments where you sit there and you go, and I have to say, whoever edited this knew it was happening, because in the Doctor Strange sequence there is a joke where things keep jump cutting, and when they do, Thor's out of sorts, like, huh, what? What's going on? And I honestly think that's their way of playing with it. That's their way of saying, yeah, we know there are some jumps here, but if you stick with us, we'll have fun. But let's jump into elements of fiction here. And we're going to start with the setting. It's the basic MCU we've spent the last 15 years learning about. It's the same world of the Avengers. It's the same world that we've seen 2 Thor movies in. Now, we do get to go to new places like Skara, which is really a Planet Hulk story, and we get to introduce to new characters, well, maybe characters that have been there all along, even if they're ones we haven't seen. But at the end of the day, the setting itself is the same. We have a junk planet, we have a place full of fire giants, and then we have Asgard. And that brings us to our characters. And oh boy, is this going to take some time. Let's start with Doctor Strange. If you've seen the trailer at the end of his movie, the little tag, then you've pretty much seen 90% of what he does in this. In fact, only a few seconds of added footage matter, and even then, it's just to the same point. Up next is Loki and Thor. Thor and Loki, the brothers. We spend a lot of time with these two, with them arguing, bickering, and basically being brothers. And the fact that one of them is a psychopath who tried to rule the world and has tried to kill the other one multiple times kind of gets played off as a joke, and that's a little, sometimes they go for the joke a little too much with these two. Thor hasn't really changed much since we saw him last in Age of Ultron, and Loki hasn't changed one bit. Then we have our next returning character, Bruce Banner the Hulk. And you know what? He's not in anywhere near as much of this as you would have thought. He has a bunch of questions, like I still don't quite get how he got to Skara, or why he was so mad that he stayed in Hulk form. A lot of it got left on the cutting room floor because it was just, hey, in Planet Hulk this happened, even though in Planet Hulk there was a completely different reason for it. A bunch of jokes get played at his expense, including a pratfall or two that I don't understand why we're giving the Hulk/Banner pratfalls. But we do take one giant leap forward towards merged Hulk, which is what I'm hoping for. Specifically, I had wished that Thor had thought through enough to call him on it. Banner at one point tells Thor it was different this time. It's like Hulk had the keys and had locked me out, where normally it feels like we each have one hand on the steering wheel. There's part of me that really wanted Thor to just say, isn't that what you want? To lock him out? There's also this not-so-funny joke where Thor first tells Hulk, no, I don't like Banner, I like you. And then later tells Banner, no, I don't like Hulk, I like you. And both times it just came off as, meh. First he tells Hulk, no, we're like the same, which is that whole fire and water scene we've seen in the previews. And that was kind of cool, because you can see him, like, respecting him as a warrior, but he doesn't say respect like a warrior. And then with Banner, Banner's like, I think you're just using me to get to Hulk. Thor totally should have turned around and been like, no, right now I need a super genius to help get me off this planet, not a big wall of muscle who's going to cause a fight and be conspicuous. Our new characters that are mostly played for laughs include this guy, and I don't even get what they were going for, or why they had Jeff Goldblum do it the way he did. Basically, he was just a bumbling idiot who kind of fell into being in charge, and didn't even know how to control the people around him. I'm sure you're picking up a pattern with this whole comic relief thing. The woman behind him is even worse. Alright, so let's talk about some serious characters, some serious kick-ass characters. Let's talk about Hel. Hel, Fenris, Surtur, all kind of just get thrown at you. If you don't know the comics and you don't know the mythology, well, maybe actually not knowing the mythology is better, considering what they do to change Hel from that, but they do it in the comics too. So, just powerful elder gods older than Thor. Remember, in this world, the whole science magic thing means that even gods are actually just really long-lived people. Which then brings us to Valkyrie. And Valkyrie kicks serious ass. She's basically Han Solo meets Thor, and in every way responds in both those genres perfectly. Now, having said that, she is obviously the newest member of the team, and a partial love interest for Thor, so it was kind of weird we didn't have Sif around, and the breaking up with Jane Foster in just a offhand remark was kind of weird too. All in all, of course, the main character is Thor himself. But I saved the weirdest for last. The Executioner in the comic is a brutal character with a magical axe that has a long history of doing all sorts of dastardly dude, but is still an Asgardian at heart. This one switches sides super fast, jumps onto Hela's side, and then doesn't actually perform the duty of an Executioner. In fact, her original statement to him, if it weren't turned into a joke of, oh, and mostly killing people, might have actually been a better explanation for what the title of Executioner was. And the scene at the end, when I guess it was supposed to be his redemption, really fell flat on me. I just really don't get where they were going with a lot of the characters when it comes to the actual subtle storytelling moments. So what about the plot? Well, this is where I have most of my problems. The plot was linear. I'm going to try to explain it to you, but it's actually like 4 movie plots put together in quick jump cut sequence. Alright, so Thor's on the hunt for the Infinity Gems. Loki had replaced the Odin's son. Oh, no, had replaced Odin on the throne and put Odin on Earth for safekeeping. Heimdall knew this and retreated into the woods. Thor also has a lack of confidence because he has some problems. And then on top of all this, with Odin actually now dying, it means that Hel has been unleashed. Hel has actually got a whole secretive thing going on where she is the most powerful of the Asgardians and the one who could theoretically destroy all of the world because she's the god of death. However, there's also this whole plot where Surtur is trying to start Ragnarok. Okay. Fitting in there is also the Planet Hulk story. Starting to notice the problem. Okay. It's a good idea, but they rush through things. And to a certain extent, this is what I've been asking for. Hey, look, here's Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange is going to handle some stuff on Earth. Hey, look, here is Surtur. Surtur just exists in this world. Got it? Cool, move on. Hey, we already know Hulk is super tough and went missing at the end of Age of Ultron. Hey, look, we already know what's going on with Thor and Loki, right? Alright, then let's keep moving. I was able to follow and keep up with it, and only a handful of things really irked me to the point of being continuity errors, but we'll talk about those in a minute. Overall, it's a good story, but again, you could have totally done Planet Hulk, you could have done Ragnarok with all of Surtur being foiled, you could have done Thor hunting for Infinity Gems, and all 3 of those could have been full-length movies. So the question of whose point of view we follow is very simple. This is all about the Odin sons, mostly Thor, but occasionally dipping into Loki, with ever so slight moments where we're in Banner's head, but realistically most of it's Thor. Up until now, you might have mistaken me for not enjoying this movie. I really did. Any of the themes and symbolism is a good reason. Thematically, the story of Thor is the story of coming to terms with who you are, and making yourself worthy, growing up, and being able to take responsibility for your actions. And at the very beginning of this movie, he even says, you know, I have been making stupid mistakes, but it always seems to work out in the end. Now, both Thor and Thor the Dark World showcase this in different ways. The Dark World went more into how he's a citizen of 2 planets. This kinda did both, and it did it well. The entire idea that sometimes he needs a lesson or 2 is very dramatically proven, and his father's final lesson to him was pretty amazing. And for those of you that don't know, Norse mythology has a reason why Odin is missing an eye. He plucked it out as part of an experiment to learn and gain more power. The ability to control what in the comic books we would call the Odin Force. Basically, it made him wiser to have lost something. And I think that is pretty symbolic too, that he gained more sight when Thor lost his eye. Yeah, this picture's totally photoshopped. By this scene, he's already got only one eye. And I will say that now that I'm looking at it, it's rather obvious there's eye damage there. But okay. Let's talk about what I did and didn't like specifically. We'll start with the good. This movie had the Thor I liked. The Thor that's out in space doing godly and powerful and mighty things. It even had him learning how to deal with other people and taught him some lessons. But it really had him be powerful. And every action sequence was amazeballs. The soundtrack was great. Whoever put together what visuals go with what sounds was great. There's a great juxtaposition where the first fight sequence we see him in plays the same song as the last one to showcase just how badass he's become, because of course the hammer's been destroyed in the meantime, showcasing that he's just as powerful without it. Now then, having said that, the bad. Like a lot of the post-Whedon Marvel movies, this movie is almost afraid to take itself seriously. Even in very dramatic moments where we should be stopping to consider things, it hits us with a joke. And yeah, I get it. Ha ha, we need to laugh from time to time. But at the same time, there is such a thing as too much. It also ends up with trying to fill in the blanks from previous movies. Like, oh, this is a fake to the Infinity Gauntlet. Did that really add much to this? I don't think so. All the constant references and little bit of here and there were done middling to well. But I think that the entire movie would have been handled better if they had just gone a little straighter and not cut to jokes quite so often. With a slightly longer run time, this movie has a lot of great themes and a great in-jokes and some great continuity gags. They didn't need all the jokes. What about the ugly? There were some plot holes, things that CinemaSins is going to make a lot of fun of and Honest Trailers is going to point out some of these flaws. I'm not going to go into them. But where a couple of them took me out of the story, the one that bugged me the most was the fact that they couldn't decide whether the gods were magical or technology-based. And they never seemed to get this figured out in MCU. I won't really know for a couple of days what scenes really stuck with me. But one thing is bugging me that I'm just going to have to pick that nit on. In the Quinjet, there's a scene where they talk about the fact that there's extra change of clothes for Tony Stark, but not for Bruce Banner. Let me get this straight. You guys didn't consider the fact that the guy that hulks out and rips his clothes might need an extra set of clothes in the Quinjet? It just seemed weird. But those were my thoughts, and overall, I did enjoy the movie. Like I said up top, this is an Electrum. It's going to be fun, and you're going to be entertained if you go see it. There's going to be a couple things that are going to drive you nuts. Big fans that dive into things and really enjoy the continuity are going to be able to pick several nits here, and the more casual fan base are going to get lost on some of it. At least that's my thought on this. I was also surprised there was no Infinity Gem at all in this movie. But those were my thoughts. What about yours? Let me know down in the comment section. Did you enjoy Thor Ragnarok? Were you able to follow it? And if so, did you also think there were too many pratfalls? Now, as everyone does here on YouTube, I need to ask you to like and share this video. Give it a thumbs up, tell someone else about it, and if this is your first time here, click that subscribe button. I'm trying to build a community, one where we can examine stories, and sometimes that means picking apart even a really fun action ride, and saying, there are some flaws deep down, even though we enjoy it. For now, I hope you have a good night, and thank you for walking with us through the heart of Thor Ragnarok.